Well, good morning and welcome back to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. I trust that you are well. Um, you know, a couple of people, I'm not saying that thousands of people have thronged me and asked me questions because they don't. It's just a few people in my life will occasionally ask me a question about this or that. And one of the questions I've gotten recently is, what is what is fascism? And I say it's the F word. Don't say that word. It's the F word, right? Well, this morning we're going to talk about what the F word is. Because when most people hear the word fascism, their minds jump to images of Nazi stormtroopers, Mussolini pounding the balcony rail in Rome, or grainy black and white film reels of Hitler whipping the crowd up into a frenzy. Remember? The word becomes shorthand for every form of evil authoritarianism. We've been conditioned, trained really, to think of fascism as a phenomenon of the political right. But that's not what the record says. Now, before you get all crazy, let's go straight to the source. Benito Mussolini is the man who invented fascism, laid it out in a document called the Doctrine of Fascism. Here's how he put it: the fascist conception of life stresses the importance of the state and accepts the individual only insofar as his interests coincides with those of the state. Did you get that? The state comes first. You, as an individual, only matters if your goals, your dreams, your values happen to align with that of the state that have already the state have already decided. If you're out of step, you're irrelevant. Or worse, an obstacle. Now, let's stop right there. Does that sound like the American right to you? Does that sound like a philosophy that values limited government, personal freedom, free enterprise, private property, and the right to worship? Of course not. That's the opposite of everything that the conservative tradition stands on. In Mussolini's Italy, free market capitalism was not celebrated. It was treated as a disease. Small business and big corporations alike were pulled under the thumb of the regime. The idea that the invisible hand guiding the economy was replaced by the iron fist of the state. Private companies could exist, but only as so long as they served the goals of the government. Think about it this way: you could own a bakery, but the state told you what flour to buy, how much bread to make, what price to sell it for, and which politically connected families to serve first. It was ownership on paper and slavery in practice. Mussolini wasn't alone. Across Europe, the same disease spread. Francisco Franco in Spain, Adolf Hitler in Germany, all of them dressed it up in different costumes: Italian pride, German racial superiority, Spanish nationalism. But the core was the same. The individual disappears, the state absorbs everything. Now, take Hitler's Germany, the archetype of fascist evil. The word Nazi itself is shorthand for National Socialist German Workers' Party. Notice the second word, socialist, and they meant it. Our friend Jonah Goldberg, in his book Liberal Fascism, was one of the first books I got years ago from a very good friend that set this whole thing going forward for me. Reminded the readers that, contrary to popular belief, the Nazis weren't capitalists. They were passionate socialists. They believed in guaranteed jobs. I mean, do we hear that? Do we hear that now? They promised free health care. Do we hear that now? They taxed inherited wealth into oblivion. Does that happen now? They push massive public education programs designed to create loyal subjects to the Reich. They tried to purge the church out of public life. They insisted the state, they inserted the state into every crevice of society, into family, into schools, into religion. They they even promoted things that sound eerily familiar to today's left. Government bans on smoking, euthanasia for the unfit, abortion for the undesirable, racial quotas in universities, speech codes on campus. Do you see the through line yet? None of this stuff lines up with conservatism. None of this lines up with the free market, live and let live philosophy of the American right. Well, fascism was and always will be a project of the left. It grew out of the same soil of socialism and communism, the belief that the individual must bow to the collective. Joy Reid said that your children don't belong to you. Joy Reid said that your children belong to the collective. Barack Obama tells kids to argue with your parents. And that the state must hold the whip hand. Now, let's bring America into the frame. Our founding principles could not be more different. The Declaration of Independence talks about unalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, rights that do not come from government, rights that government exists to protect, not to bestow. James Madison warned against the tyranny of the majority. George Washington insisted religion and morality were essential for political prosperity. The entire system was built with suspicion of concentrated power, checks, balances, divided government, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to worship. The founders didn't say, you can speak freely as long as the state approves. They said, the state has no business gagging you at all. So when today's media or academic elites scream, Trump's a fascist, remember this history. Compare Mussolini's vision of the all-powerful state with Trump's emphasis on deregulation, on letting states set their own course, on cutting taxes to put money back in your pocket instead of Washington's coffers. Whether you love Trump or hate him, you cannot honestly call the man who wants to shrink federal bureaucracy a fascist. It doesn't square with the definitions. It doesn't square with reality. Not Mussolini's, not Hitler's, not any serious historians. And here's the sad truth. The only way the Trump is a fascist narrative works is if people never actually read what fascists wrote or examine what fascists did. If you just scream the word long enough, maybe it'll stick. Friends, words do matter, but definitions matter. History matters. So when you abandon these anchors, you end up adrift in the sea of propaganda. And that's exactly where the left wants the American people. So let's be clear. It is not the child of the right-wing conservatism. That's not what fascism is. It was birthed by the collective ideology nurtured by socialism and weaponized by those who worship the state above the individual.